All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show. My name is Berns Galang. You can call me Berns or Berns Fairy. And today we're going to be talking about animal rights and letting them have a voice through published literature. So I'm here today with our guest, Will Lowry. He's an attorney and animal rights advocate. And it's really so nice to have an attorney on the other side to speak for the animals. So, hello, Will. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, hey Burns, thanks for having me and thanks for organizing this event. I know it's a worthwhile cause and I'm happy to be a part of it.
All right. Would you like to tell us more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Will Lowry. I am, as you mentioned, an attorney. I wasn't always an attorney, but I live in the United States in Virginia, and I'll try to give you the abbreviated version. But right now, I am an animal rights attorney. I work for a nonprofit organization on issues related to farmed animals, so cows and chickens and pigs and sheep. But in my spare time, I volunteer for a number of animal causes, but I also write books related to animal rights, and I'm happy to talk about any or all of that today with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Sounds like a really wonderful cause. And what made you embark or enter law school and pursue a career in animal law?
Yeah, I had, initially I had a different career. I worked in a corporate world for a financial company. And about 20 years ago, I started getting involved in volunteering for animal causes. And for me, that started when I had adopted a couple of dogs from an animal shelter. They were pit bull type dogs, which I know in the United States, they're much maligned dogs. People discriminate against them. They use them for fighting. And that sort of adoption of those dogs opened my eyes to a bunch of animal issues that were facing those dogs, and that sort of opened the floodgates to other issues. And I got involved with a number of groups, whether it was protesting for stores selling fur or doing disaster response for animals or other things of that nature. And I finally just decided that I didn't want to work a corporate job anymore. I wanted to sort of dedicate my time full time to animals, and I went to law school specifically to study animal law late in life, and that worked out well for me. And I'm fortunate that that led me to a good nonprofit where I can do that full time.
Oh, I see. That's great. And so your journey evolved into being actively involved in animal causes, right?
It did, yeah, and I think the evolution word is key, and I think that's the key for a lot of people. I certainly didn't start off as an animal rights attorney or writing these books. I mean, for me, it was sort of this gradual eye opening, to see this type of issue impacting these animals. And for me, it was pit bulls, and then that led to interacting with other people and starting to question internally, why am I just spending my time on dog issues when there are all these other issues. And so I started to see the issues, and I also started to see the opportunities. And you're absolutely right, it was kind of an evolution, and my eyes opened gradually to the host of opportunities that are out there to help animals, and that's kind of led me to where I am today.
Oh, great. I love that. So, how did you discover the world of self-publishing, and how does it help you address some of these issues that may not often be or may often be discounted by a lot of people?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't know that I could fully pinpoint exactly how I discovered self-publishing. I know that when I was in the corporate world, I had a friend of a friend that wrote a book, sort of like a fantasy Lord of the Rings type book, and somebody gave it to me, and I remember holding it and looking at it, and I was like, wow, this is somebody that I know that actually wrote this and had it published, and it looks like a legitimate book, just like anything else. And that's my first memory. I don't think I did much with that, but as a kid, I always liked to write stories and poetry. And I think at some point, I had so many stories from working or volunteering with animal shelters about dogs that I felt people just never saw or never paid attention to. And I think I had some inclination that these stories, these dogs all have individual stories, and their stories need to be told. And I think that got me to exploring, well, how, if I wrote a story, would I publish that? And then it just became a matter of doing my own research, going online and reading blogs and articles and watching YouTube videos about how the world of self-publishing works. And once you figure out it's not terribly complicated, it becomes much less daunting. And then it was like, hey, the onus is on me. I know how the process works. Now I just need to finish the story. And so I sat down and wrote the story, and the goal was to get sort of this story of a dog in a shelter that most people wouldn't care about or think about out to the public. And so for me, it became a mission of learning the process and a mission of finishing the story. And I was fortunate enough to write it, and it's been very well received. And for me, it's not about the personal accolades. It's about each person reading that story hopefully walks away with a new appreciation of dogs that may be in a similar circumstance. And that's the value for me.
Oh, wonderful. I love that because I'm also planning to publish or create my own book as well, which is also centered on pets and animals and caring for them. And your work is more on fiction, right? These are fiction books.
They are. I've written one of my stories was, I would say, mostly nonfiction. It was a short story that I wrote that was based on a visit that I took to a slaughterhouse to actually observe the process, just to inform myself. And so that story is mostly nonfiction, based on what I saw happen to a specific cow, but the rest of them are fiction. They're all rooted in personal experiences or interactions with animals, but in general, yes, they're fiction. And just real quick, back to your initial point, I mean, kudos to you for writing something. I think the message that I would send to all our viewers is that it's not hard. I think everybody has a story to tell, and it's really not a complicated process to get that out there. And there's a very fulfilling feeling once you see a review or you hear from somebody that they read the story that was previously in your head and is now on paper. And so I would just encourage people to explore that. It's not as daunting as it seems. And I think everybody's got valuable stories to tell. And I think the world is richer and more fulfilling with those stories out there in the public sort of ether. So I'd encourage people to explore that.
Oh, that is a massive relief to hear because I actually think it's something daunting and complicated to do because I'm also planning to do the same, but that's in the works.
Yep. Yeah. It's really, just put your nose down and research and read and take notes about the process. Ask people. There's plenty of communities, Facebook groups, bulletin boards where people will help and guide you. There's podcasts out there. And it definitely does take some time and research to invest, but it's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to have millions of dollars. You could, honestly, for probably $50 or less, you could get a cover made, you could get your book formatted, and you could publish it online. So yeah, I would encourage people to look into it if they think they have a story worth sharing.
Yeah, wonderful. Because I've actually worked with a client who self-published her first book. I illustrated the book for her, and that's actually my first professional experience as a children's book illustrator.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Right. Okay, and you've written the Chasing the Blue Sky. Is this your first book?
Yeah, that was my first book, and that was about the dog story that I mentioned. I mean, that story specifically is about a black pit bull mixed type dog in a shelter, and I just had seen so many over the years that are overlooked. People don't want pit bull type dogs. They're black and they sort of get obscured in the shadows and they just get forgotten about. And for me, it was sort of this realization that every single one of those dogs has a story. They came from somewhere, they have experiences and feelings and emotions, and they have a story to tell. And that was the intent of that book, was just to tell the story. So very long-winded answer to your question, but yes, that was my first book.
Okay, wonderful. And it's nice to know that there's something that you can give the animals, especially the dogs, a voice in this format and this avenue because it's not something that you can tell them directly, and you can also touch on people's hearts and minds and emotions in addressing these issues. So that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I think I mean, to me, there's power in writing to do the things that you said. I mean, visual sort of art is one thing, but to put words down on paper and, I may use 2, 3 sentences to describe an emotion that somebody might not have experienced. And I think people reading are more sort of engrossed and absorbed in what they're reading. And if you can pull the heartstrings while they're deep in that place of reading, I think it sometimes can be more powerful than something visual.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And is there any advice that you can give to our audience on how to improve our relationship with animals?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways I could go with this. I think the most simple thing I could do is, and it sort of ties into what I just said, is just um, recognize in your day-to-day life that every animal that you're interacting with, whether it's a dog you pass in the street or a deer that just darted across the road or a cow that now might be on somebody's plate that they're consuming, that each of those animals is an entity, is a being that had a life and that has emotions and feelings and consciousness. And I think if you just stop and recognize that each individual animal is not some unit of production or not some strange alien species that has things that are completely foreign to us, but if you recognize that they are more alike us than people give them credit for, and they have a depth of emotions and thoughts and relationships and social interactions, I think if you just recognize that in every single interaction you have with an animal, you will start to question some of the ways that we live as a society. We'll question the ways that we treat animals, we keep animals, we eat animals, we exploit animals. And I think that's probably the single most thing that people can do, is to recognize that each of those animals is a being with a story and things very similar to us. And that's what I try to capture in my books, but I think people can do that in their own day-to-day lives. And I think they would be surprised at how much richer their world becomes when they do that.
Wonderful. I actually um I wasn't really sensitive to animals before, and now I'm taking care of cats, but I used to not like them when I was a kid. But there was a time one day when I was walking in the streets, and a tiny little kitten was calling me, calling me. She just kept meowing and meowing, and then I just knew at that time I had to pick her up. She was injured, and I took her home, and caring for her wasn't easy, and especially me not knowing anything on how to care for a cat, especially if the cat is injured. So we developed a bond from then, and then um, since I had to care for her more than an ordinary cat, a healthy one, I developed this really unique connection with her. So, and that's the time when I was transformed. That was the first cat that I ever took care of. And from then on, one cat after another, I started to love them. And now I have seven. Their lives are more important than mine.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, my partner has 7 cats as well, so she's similar to you. And you're right. I mean, each one of those interactions is different and unique, and I think that's the power in it, right? Is just to, I mean, think of what would have happened if you had just let that cat go. You never would have known about it or thought about it, but when you stopped and welcomed that cat into your life has changed, the cat's life has changed, and I think the one thing that people often don't stop to think of is that these animals, whatever condition they're living in, when we walk away, we turn our eyes, we don't see it, their life still goes on, whether that's in a cage or in a slaughterhouse or on the street like the cat. I mean, their life is going to continue. So while I'm sitting here at the computer talking to you, there are animals outside that are living their lives, and some are hunting, some are trying to cross the road, some are waiting to be killed. And so I think you just have to sort of try to put yourself in a position to recognize that we are not the only ones, humans are not the only ones on this planet that have these lives that are deep and full of meaning, that there are other animals that in parallel to us are having those lives. And I think we can sort of reach across and touch them and help them, just like you did that cat. And I think there's some wonderful things that can come from that.
Right, I totally agree. And for some people, especially pet owners, they're not just pets, they're members of the family. And for really pet lovers, it's really a different connection that they have with animals, different from people, and they can connect to them in a much deeper, sometimes much deeper level compared to interactions with humans.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then,
You often get all of the good things, but not the bad things that come with humans, right? Like there's some solace and comfort to come with just spending time with an animal. You're not getting a lot of drama, a lot of the sort of ancillary stuff that comes along with it. So I agree with you.
right. All right. Okay, so is there something else that you would like to leave our audience or anything that you think is important to share to them?
Oh, I think you've covered it a lot. I mean, I just, I think the two things I would say is, like I said earlier, just, consider our interactions with animals. And the other thing I would say is, and I think this resonates with both my experience and yours from what you shared, is that there really is a world of opportunity out there. I mean, you saw the cat on the street, you saw this opportunity for these events. Similarly, I saw an opportunity for books. And so
Mhm.
we are not bound and constrained in our lives to just do certain things. Like if people have the initiative, whether it's animal issues or any other issue, a lot of it is just a matter of finding the free time and taking that first step to say, this is important to me. I want to make something better, whether it's the lives of animals or the lives of somebody else. And so I find that rewarding when you can sort of step outside of the lines that society sets for you and say, how do I make an opportunity that might be beneficial to the world in some other way? So I would just encourage people to do that. And thank you again for the event. I think it's a wonderful cause and I appreciate the time you spent.
Yeah, right. We all can do something and make a difference. And I believe we all have gifts and skills to share to people and eventually help them once we
Absolutely.
got in touch with that.
Yep.
All right. And do you have an offer in mind that you want to share with our audience as well and where they can find you?
Yeah, well, you can find me. The company that I started to self-publish is called Lomac Publishing, and it's Lomack. That's named after those two pit bull dogs that I first adopted. So if you go to lomackpublishing.com, that's the website. And as far as a free offer, I am more than happy to share my books for free. I think what I teed up for this talk today was my second book, which is called Where the Irises Bloom, and that is actually about a cat, a stray kitten on the streets of an urban city. And so I will be making that available for free to your readers. And so stay tuned for that.
All right, that's wonderful. Okay, so we've had a very special segment today, and I hope it has provided meaning for you, everyone. And I wish you so much love. I wish you a lovely life with your pets, and I'd like to thank you again, Will, for your time and for being part of this show. And wish you all the best for the new year.
Great. Thank you so much for having me and for organizing this.
All right. Okay, so bye for now and see you around for updates. And yeah, I'll be posting the links to the free offer and the website that you can check. So and updates for future events. All right then. So see ya.